Hi, I'm Jenny Bettany. I'm here today with Hypnotikadiet. I'm a psychologist by trade, and we're going to talk about some of the things that go on in your brain that have such a big impact on the way that you feel and the way that you behave. So too many people hold limiting beliefs that hold them back in life and stop them from doing the things that they want to do. They can stop you successfully completing exercise programs, they can derail you from your diet, and they can make you believe that you don't deserve to make the changes that you want to make in your life. So what we're going to do in the next half an hour or so is have a little look at how the brain learns and what the sort of biological basis for some of these thoughts and beliefs is. And then we're going to have a look at what we can do to replace these horrible ones with some more helpful, supportive, positive ones that can help us move forward with our life. Okay, I'm going to start with a little bit of science. How does the brain learn? So the brain really is just a selection of cells, about 10 billion neurons to be more precise. And when cells communicate with one another, they need to talk to one another. Could I have somebody who'd like to volunteer to help me? Somebody who can catch, ideally. Wonderful. Catch? Wonderful. So let's imagine that I'm one neuron, the gentleman over there is another neuron, and the lady behind him is another neuron. If I want to communicate with him, I need to somehow cross this space between the cells, and we call that the synapse. And the way that we do this is with neurotransmitters. Here we go again. You ready? Catch? Perfect. So when we learn, our cells learn to communicate with different cells in a particular pathway like this. And the more often that we practice a particular pathway, catch, the easier it gets, the more familiar you get with that process. And that's literally what happens when you learn. Particular cells in your brain learn to communicate more effectively with other neurons in their brain. And we call that a neural pathway. And this is absolutely fantastic. We really want the brain to be able to learn in this way. We don't want to have to think in minute detail about everything we do every time we clean our teeth, or that we want to speak, or we want to write something down. We want our brain to automatically launch into the sequence of neural networks. We want the cells to start communicating in this kind of a way because that's brilliant. Means we don't have to think about it. And this is actually a really sensible way for the brain to perform from a sort of historical perspective, because the brain developed right back in the day when we were all cavemen, and we don't want to be thinking about the tiny little minutiae of our life. We want to be scanning the horizon for saber-toothed tigers and getting out of danger like that. Okay, so our brain's very efficient. When we've got these neural networks in place, the tiniest little thing can trigger it, and off we go down this network. And like I say, that's brilliant if you're driving a car or you're riding a bike, because it means you don't have to think about it. It's not quite so helpful if you're triggering a limited belief pattern. If you're reaching for the biscuits and you're going, oh, I need to eat all of them, I can't just have one. When we start to learn things, these neural networks don't work quite so efficiently. We need to practice them. And practice makes perfect. It really strengthens these links. So I really like karate, for example. And when I first started karate, not so great, used to get kicked quite a lot. These days, quite a lot of practice, I react without having to think about it. And that's what we want to get to, a place where you've rehearsed and you now have in place the networks that you want in your brain, so that you're not getting kicked in the face when you're playing karate. Or when you're reaching for the biscuits, you're not going, oh, I've got to eat all of them, must eat that entire cake. We're looking for something a bit more supportive. Now, the great thing about these neural networks is they don't just learn by doing. You can also grow these really strong pathways in your brain by mentally rehearsing things. And that's why I bet loads of you do this. If you're going to have a really difficult conversation at work, you start thinking about it the night before, you run it over in your head, you think about what the other person might say. And again, that's really useful in day-to-day life. You can prepare yourself mentally for things. But if what you're practicing in your head is, I'm not worthy of a successful diet, there's absolutely no way I could go to the gym every day, I can't eat healthily, then it's getting stronger and stronger and stronger. And the more likely you are to trigger that pathway and go straight down that route without even being aware of it. You're going to go straight into subconscious processing without noticing. And if you're triggering a self-limiting belief, then you're going to go straight to a really negative place without ever realizing what made you feel so horrible in the first place. So limiting beliefs. Any of these seem familiar? Limiting beliefs always seem to fall in the sort of sphere of, I can't, I'm not good enough, I'm only, there's no way I could do that, I don't deserve that, it's just too difficult. And these things can really hold us back in life. They can stop you from doing the things that you want to do and make you feel that you don't deserve to move forwards. So I love this quote. It's a quote by Henry Ford, who was the gentleman that created the Ford Motor Company. And he said, whether or not you think you can, you're right. And that's absolutely true. What you believe you can do is true. If you believe you can do it, you can. And if you believe you can't, you absolutely can't. So getting those beliefs right in the first place is really important for moving forwards. So where do our beliefs come from? We are literally the sum of our experiences. Throughout our lives, we go along, we have experiences, and we try and make sense of them in our brain. We interpret them. And the way in which that we interpret these events and the way that we understand them is very unique to every single one of us. We also pick up habits. So if your mother always told you you've got to finish your plate, you're probably programmed without even being aware of it to clear your plate, and you kind of go down that route without thinking about it. Alternatively, maybe your mother used to give you sweets as a treat, and now you associate sweet things with being good. It's a reward, it's a positive thing. Or perhaps when you go to perhaps you associate burgers and candy floss with fun because you used to have them at the fair. Perhaps you need to have a drink to make yourself feel relaxed because you associate that with the positive, happy environment. So we pull together all of these experiences and our interpretations, our habits, what other people have told us is the right way to behave, and we create our own set of beliefs, or a schema. And these schema are incredibly powerful. We use them to filter all of our incoming information and make sense of it. It's like a cognitive shortcut, so we don't have to think about everything. And again, we're coming back to looking for our saber-toothed tigers. We don't want to be wasting time thinking about things we already know. We want to be looking for what's new coming in, what new information do we need to be aware of and deal with. So an interesting thing about schema is that they enable you to take an event that's neutral and make sense of it in very, very different ways. So if, for example, a mouse happened to run across the stage, those of us who aren't scared of mice, it's just a mouse, it's neutral, it doesn't mean anything, we can move on with our life. But someone who's scared of mice, their twitchy feet, their long whiskers, their tails, probably shuffling a little bit uncomfortable there, looking for them by your feet. Oh no, is there actually a mouse in here? Is it coming? And what we'd see in the brain is that there'd be a whole lot more activity going on in the brain of somebody who has a fear of mice than there is in somebody who doesn't, because they've got that schema that they already know that they're scared of that mouse. They haven't thought about it in this instance, they just know that they are. And if we take that in terms of your beliefs about your food, for example, if you're constantly telling yourself, oh, I always give in to temptation, you're going to be able to think of plenty of examples where you have given in to temptation. As soon as there's a possibility you might be giving in to temptation, you've already made that decision because it's part of your schema that you always give in to temptation. So if you are able to reprogram these schema with more supportive ways of thinking, then actually that can make a really big difference to how you respond to things, how you react to things. And this is something that sports people do all the time, actually. I don't know if anybody's heard about sports people who mentally rehearse what their winning penalty kick's going to be like. Yeah, absolutely. Or they're mentally rehearsing what it's going to feel like when they cross that finish line first, what it feels like, what they can see, what they can smell, how their body feels, how that success feeling feels like. And actually it's incredibly common for sports people to do that. Tiger Woods, for example, started his cognitive training at the age of 13. And he's regularly seen hypnotherapists and NLP practitioners ever since. And I've got a really nice quote from Tiger Woods which says, "I have an inner peace on the golf course. I've learnt to trust the subconscious and my instincts have never lied to me." He's got that really supportive, strong cognitive schema in place. He doesn't need to think about what he's doing. When the pressure's up, he doesn't need to think about that. He just needs to focus. He already knows what he needs to be doing. He's rehearsed it. And his neural networks, all those cells are already communicating with one another. They're doing exactly what he wants them to do. Most of the time. Obviously, sometimes we all get it wrong. Things go off-piste. But if you can get in place something that is helpful and is supportive, it's going to make a world of a difference. Another interesting feature about the brain is that it isn't terribly logical. We like to think that we're logical creatures, but actually not so much. And that makes a lot of sense. Because when we think back to where our brains came from, we want to be able to establish, is something a threat, and get out of the way quickly. If we see a snake on the ground, we don't want to be thinking, oh, there's a snake. Is that a snake? It looks like a snake. Is that a dangerous snake? Is that snake alive or dead? Is it a piece of rope? I don't know. I think I'll have a look. You want to be getting out of there. You want to react first, and then you want to do the analysis afterwards and make sure that it was a sensible choice. Once you're safe, you can have got all the time in the world for your analysis, but your brain is pre-programmed to respond first. And there's 3 distinct areas of the human brain. This bit back here we call the reptilian brain. It's the most primitive, basic area of the brain, and even your amphibians, your reptiles, your frogs, your crocodiles, they all have this bit of their brain, and it kind of controls things like breathing. It keeps you going without you having to think about it. It's all about responding to threat. If you're getting too hot, it's this area of the brain which gets you sweating and cools you down. And it's this area of the brain that goes, threat. This middle bit here is called the mammalian brain, and this is where we do learning and emotional response. So things like cats, dogs, horses, they all have this quite basic emotional response. So we go response, emotion, and then finally we get to the big bit, the neocortex, which is the biggest bit of the brain in the humans. It's the newest bit, and it's this bit which enables us to do analysis, complex thinking, planning, reasoning, language. Any of your intellectual elements are held in this in this neocortex, and it's very pretty much only it's in primates that you get this. So, although we think we're very logical, we've gone through two separate areas of the brain before we've actually got to the analysis. We've reacted, we've had an emotional reaction to it, and then we're doing the analysis. And you may not even get to that analysis. If you reacted and you're getting your emotional reaction, that might be enough for you to deal with it. It might never ever make it into your conscious thought patterns. If we come back to triggering a threat, our brain reacts and we have an emotional reaction. And the way that we react to a threat is with the stress response, or the fight and flight mechanism, which I'm sure most of you kind of are aware of. Your brain triggers adrenaline, which starts your heart pumping, your breathing rate increases, your body's getting ready for action, and it actually turns off all the things that aren't necessary for action, things like your immune system, digestion. It also triggers the adrenal gland, which releases cortisol, which is associated with your blood sugar level, so that when you've got your threat, it releases all of the energy you need to deal with it, and then you can respond to the threat and move on with your life. When the threat's passed, your parasympathetic nervous system restores your body to a stable state, and that's absolutely brilliant. It equips you wonderfully to deal with a physical threat. However, in today's day and age, most of our threats are no longer physical. Most people find a great deal of stress comes from emotional causes. So you find yourself being triggered into a physiological stress response from an emotional stimulus. And the difficult things about emotional stimuli is, how do you know when it's passed? The stimulus is still there, you're still feeling a bit anxious, you've not been able to deal with it, you possibly can't remove yourself from the situation if, for example, it's work that's causing you stress, and your body remains in this heightened sense of stress response, which is just so not healthy for you in the longer term. We know that it turns off your immune system, so you're more likely to get ill. It turns off your digestion, so you're more likely to put on weight as a result of it, and that's quite aside from any comfort eating we might be doing to help deal with the stress. So we really need to be dealing with some of these stress reactions. And one important way that we can do that is look at reprogramming our brain so that we're no longer evaluating something as a stressor, something that's stressful. And actually NLP and hypnosis is quite a powerful way of doing that. If we look at our schemas again, stresses are generally neutral, and it's your interpretation of them that is causing you to feel distressed or stressed as a result of it. So if you can tap into that part of your brain that's going, oh, this is scary, this is stressful, and you can reprogram with that, this is okay, I can deal with it, this is fine, I'm in control, I'm strong, then actually you're released from this stress reaction. You can think more clearly, and you can make choices that are far more supportive for you. So Hypnotikadiet pulls together all of the diet advice that you'd expect from a diet program, exercise advice, but it also really importantly includes NLP and hypnosis sessions, so that you can work on reprogramming some of these unsupportive beliefs and neural networks into something that is much more powerful and supportive of where you want to go, what you want to achieve. You can choose the foods that you actually want to go with, rather than just reaching for the biscuits. I'm feeling hungry, oh no, I go for the biscuits every time, got to eat all of them because that's part of my schema. You'll be able to free yourself from that and make more positive choices, go for the apple instead. Thank you for listening. I think if I were to leave you with one thought, it really is that your brain is just a selection of cells that have learnt to communicate with one another in a particular way. You don't have to stick with that way that they've learnt. You can change that if you want to, and you can create supportive, positive thoughts and beliefs in your own brain if you want to. And hypnosis and NLP can be really helpful for doing that.